All right, welcome back. Again, with us this afternoon, we have Kate Storey representing the Provincial Green Party, Cliff Graydon of the PCs, and Monica Guetre of the Liberals in studio. On the phone, we have Stan Struthers, the NDP candidate in Dauphin. Our next question here, maybe let's keep our answers for this one a bit shorter. The question focusing on stable funding for general farm organizations, such as KAP, as we just heard, or CAP. The current funding legislation for general farm organizations has many loopholes, and time and again CAP has asked the government to enforce the legislation to ensure that all delivery points are deducting the membership checkoff, but they are not willing to act on this, which has resulted in many farmers not being paid up members and some farmers thinking they are paid up, that sort of thing. So our third question here, is there a commitment from your party to introduce legislation that will provide a stable funding system for general farm organizations in Manitoba? And we'll let you start, Stan.
Well, sure, thanks, Kelvin. I've really enjoyed working with CAP towards the final goal of making sure that they and the National Farmers Union can, as general farm organizations, continue to represent well the interests of farmers. And I believe strongly that farmers need to have a voice, and they need to be able to be heard. They need to be able to sit down with the Minister of Agriculture in Manitoba or the federal minister, or report back to their own membership. So I think they need a stable source of funding. We've been working to try to get this done. I even thought this wouldn't be much of a partisan kind of a debate. So I approached my predecessor, and I approached the Conservatives about this to work together, and found out that they were more willing to use it as a political football and referred to it as a farmer's tax or something. So that angle didn't work very well. But we want to work with CAP and with NFU to make sure that we put a checkoff system in place that works. We want to work with them to make sure the system that's in place now it works more efficiently, and we will be working to make sure that happens as well.
Kate, your response to this question?
Okay, there are actually 3 general farm organizations, CAP, NFU, and MOA. MOA is the Manitoba Organic Alliance. We are also the voice of that sector. And I have sat in meetings in all of those 3 organizations. We've talked about stable funding. We are united. All the organizations are united in their request for stable funding. There is a wall somewhere. We've sat in the minister's office, we've talked to the opposition, and we're not getting anywhere. I'm not in government. I'm talking as a farmer here who is involved in these organizations. I don't know what the barrier is, but we need stable funding so that the farmer can choose which organization or they want to support with their dollars.
Cliff, Stan called it a farmer tax, or he alluded that that's what your party called it. So maybe your response to this question then.
Stan has a crystal ball, and he uses it whenever he thinks it's advantageous to him to point out what other people think. But really, the track record that he has is much different than what he thinks we should do. CAP has demonstrated exemplary service on behalf of Manitoba farmers, and we appreciate the working relationship we have with CAP. Ian Wishart, a former president, is a candidate in Portage la Prairie. As the official opposition, we have enjoyed good working relationships with these farm groups, and if we form government, we look forward to continued good working relationship with them. And for the people that don't know, I was a founding member of the Manitoba Cattle Producers Association and now the Manitoba Beef Producers. And I've had many discussions with them, and they have people that they want to represent and will represent and have done very well. I've personally heard different opinions on these from members of specific commodity groups who feel strongly that they are responsible to take their members' concerns forward. Before we could commit to requiring a mandatory participation in a designated farm organization, I believe we would need to review the merits of this with all Manitoba commodity groups to gauge how it would impact their respective organizations. And I might add that these 15 commodity groups have lost the confidence of the current member of Dauphin, the agricultural minister.
Thank you, Cliff. Monica, what's your response to this question about funding for general farm organizations?
The Liberal Party definitely believes in long-term funding and working with producers and farmers throughout the province, but we also want to look at these organizations providing a few more services for farmers in Manitoba and how we can help them. I've been approached by some cattle farmers, some beef producers in southeast Manitoba, asking for an insurance program, and we would like to work with the beef beef producers of Manitoba to make sure there is an insurance program in place, especially when the NDP government wants to deny there's waterborne parasites as a result of all this flooding. We don't. Health Canada hasn't, or CFI hasn't approved drugs within Canada, and ranchers are having difficulty because there's livestock that is dying. But we also need to support them in terms of where do you bring your dead livestock? We have to have places within the province. So we need to work with our producers to make sure not only there's stable funding, but how can we help them so that we are a little bit more organized?
Kate, you had some thoughts on this?
Yeah, Cliff, I think you're confusing commodity groups and the general farm organizations. Commodity groups do work on a checkoff. Everybody seems to agree with that, although we can fight about the opt-out side of it. I believe that every producer should have the opportunity to opt out of any of these programs. But the general farm organizations that cover all farmers, different than the commodity groups, need to have stable funding.
Yeah, and Calvin, that's a very good point. I don't want Cliff to misrepresent the positions of the three general farm organizations that have come to speak with me. And by the way, it's not a crystal ball that I have, Cliff. If I had a crystal ball, I would only use it for predicting the weekend for the Blue Bombers and that sort of thing.
What about the Jets?
What I have is always a letter from your caucus saying exactly what I just put on the record. So it's your letter, not a crystal ball.
Cliff, go ahead.
Yes, what we have seen, and we know that unfortunately what Kate says is not exactly what happens. The commodity groups all form the general organization, and they do have their own checkoffs. They don't want to lose that checkoff just to go to the farm organization. So what you're saying, Kate, is that you want to see two more checkoffs or another checkoff on top of what we already have. I think we have good representation in our commodity groups, and I think it's CAP's responsibility to keep those groups within their umbrella. And they will work at that.
I would have to disagree with you there. I think there's two separate functions between a general farm organization and a commodity groups. And the commodity groups do a really good job, yes. But stable funding, it needs to be a partner with the province.